Hello everyone, and welcome back to another logic tutorial. Today we're covering the subject of how to create animated frames, hand-drawn. Not so much how to draw the frames as it is to how to make them appear at the appropriate time when controlling the puppet, walking, running, you know. Animation states, if you will. Now to start with, I've got this single neutral frame of the puppet standing, which I used as a basis for this animated frame, all of which are done with paint flecks. I use this little board here, this little sculpt, as a reference point to help get the dimensions correct. And once I had drawn on the paint fleck, which I used brush flecks and surface snap to draw them, like so. Another thing I did was turn up the finish, turn up the shininess/roughness to 100%, and same with the waxiness and metalness to get the really dark, bold lines. And once I had drawn the first standing frame, I used this little thing called frame by frame. If we go back to the first frame, I created a frame of him idling. Exactly 3 frames, which is not very long, so it can look a little rushed. And I essentially did the same thing with the walking frame to create him walking. Now there's probably a better way that you could make this look. It was very hurriedly put together, since it's just for demonstration purposes only. But the more frames you add, the better. Probably around 8 would be good to get a good smooth movement going, but I used approximately 4, which is very janky looking, but it'll do for demonstration purposes. I created 3 singular frames for the beginning of a jump, the peak of a jump, and the end of a jump, which, if you're familiar with the puppet logic, you'll recognize that inside jump animations there is a jump ascent, jump peak, and jump descent, respectively. So that's what those are for. Now you may be wondering, well, how do I compile all these and not get them confused? Because, you know, it's going to look like this if you have preview invisibility turned off. Oh. Like, look at that. That's a complete mess. How do I keep track of which is which? And the simple way I came up with is, first, I create a group containing this reference board in case I need to animate more frames. And for each frame, I group this little block here . A block which is a stamped shape, invisible and non-collidable. And I basically group it with each frame, or, you know, 1, 2, 3, you know. And as I group it, if we turn on hide everything else, oops, you can see we have this one, we have this one, and I've moved the block up, and each time I label the microchip that I put on the block with L1 and X. You stamp the microchip on there. And it goes so on for each frame, and it's properly labeled, so you can find any one you want. And if you turn on X-ray mode, it'll be pretty easy. Jump peak, jump fall, jump start, idle, walking. So that's how you keep track of them. And once they're all grouped into a single group with this thing, you've got a complete set. And then I stamp this little microchip on here, which has a teleporter called Grid Telly, set to match target position, but not target orientation. Leave this off. And if we go to our puppet here, who, if you double tap right there and select all, you can make it invisible, and that way it won't show up during gameplay. But if you go inside here, inside this microchip, which contains all the logic, I guess we could call it logic. And of course it's contained in the puppet logic chip, which you can access with L1 and X. Then if we go in here, we'll see a tag labeled Grid Teller, so that's how that would attract. It'll follow the puppet around. Now, how do I animate each frame and make it appear? Well, they all have this switch connected to them. The only one that's a little bit different is the walking animation, but they all have a switch stamped inside the microchip, and all the switch is connected to is their visibility. Now, one that's slightly different, if we go to the walking one, is I've added a NOT gate. I've also made it so that the switch is turned off automatically, of course. Now for the idle, you'll want that one on from the very beginning, or, you know, such, since it is the basic one. But basically this switch with the NOT gate connected to it, what it does is if we go to this setting here, frame by frame, it resets the frame to frame 1. And the benefit of this is if it's set to loop, you'll always have him start on the same frame, which with this clunky animation it doesn't make a huge difference. But if you had a really good one, frame 1, you know, how the whole thing is put together and how it leads into the walking animation is more important. So if you just drag this with X to frame 1, while in record mode, once you're done, press the red thing, and then set it to keep changes. It'll always reset to frame 1. Now let's take a look at this, the movement chip that I created in here, microchip. First we've got this little doohickey here. I've taken the output from left stick local, connected it to this node, and that I have connected to a splitter, which I have taken the left-right value from, and connected it to another splitter. And I've connected the positive to A, and the negative output to B. Now what does this do? Well, this flips all of these frames, the entire group, to the opposite side. So when you go left and right, let's say you go right, for instance, it will remain neutral, but when you go left, it'll flip all the frames in the opposite direction. Which you can do with, you know, the grid snap methodology, just turn it around. Make sure, though, that when you're recording, you're using keyframe mode and not action mode on this action recorder. And set it to loop. Another thing I ought to mention is our puppet is actually set, if you go in here with L1 and X, he's set to 2D movement, so that he only walks on a 2D plane. It'll make it easier for you to rig up this logic, so keep that in mind. Next, we've got these movement frames. I've got a movement sensor hooked up here, connected to a node. Velocity overall connected to the node. And that node is connected to a calculator set to greater than 0. So if he's moving at all, he'll be walking. Next, I've connected it to a NOT gate. Oh, and don't forget to connect input to A. And all the NOT gate does is turn on our idle that I demonstrated earlier. It actually should be set default to off. I forgot to mention that. I think I mentioned something the opposite earlier, but either way, it should be off because this thing will turn it on. And then when you're moving, the NOT gate will switch off, so the idle won't be active. And you just turn on the power to this switch to create the walking segment. And now I'm going to go over to the jumps. This is a little bit tricky. There's several ways to do this. But basically, as soon as he leaves the ground, I take the distance from ground output with X and connect it to a calculator set to greater than 0.01. And what hide frames does is turn off the movement, basically shutting off all idle frames and all running frames. If you just turn off the movement chip, that's what will happen. So when we're off the ground, those are no longer active. And I've got 3 manually selected frames for the start and the jump peak. We go in here, I turn on the power for all 3, from ascent to peak to descent. I've also connected each output, jump ascent, jump peak, and jump descent to calculators, which all have various different settings. And I've kind of turned them all off. You may notice that the power is off. Normally it's on. But the reason why I've done this is because I have 2 methods for creating this effect, which I will demonstrate. I'm going to go ahead and shut this off, though, because we don't need it for this right now. It takes a little bit of trial and error, but basically you want to figure out the exact threshold while jumping and performing these various animations to have these frames active. Otherwise they'll overlap with each other and that looks kind of janky. This method though is very tricky and you need precise, readouts for it. But I found 0.25 is the perfect window for the ascent. 0.66 is the perfect window for the peak. And 0.45 is the perfect for the descent. Let's go ahead and test it. You'll notice a little bit of frame overlap. That's why I don't really, this system's a little bit iffy. But I just thought I'd mention it in case you have trouble with the second system I'm going to use. You can also see our walking animations working just fine. outside of looking very crummy indeed. But it's more about how to activate the state than it is the integrity of the animation. I'm sure people on the Dreams community can do much better than that. Probably animate some really nice stuff with enough time and patience. But I'm going to go ahead and shut all of these off again, except for the jump descent. The reason why is because when we're falling, I want to just hold on this frame, this fall frame. And we're going to turn this back on, and we just have to go in here to the jumped output and connect it to the node, which is connected to a timeline set to play once. Now what this does is manually do the same thing as this, just a little bit different. It's going to automatically play a jump duration of ascent, peak, and jump descent. Now the exact timing of this may vary, but I think, you know, trial and error again helps you get it right. And when we go into jump descent, it's just going to go back to this. But let's go ahead and test it with the timeline method. It's a little bit smoother, except for when you land, I think. Something that might help is you could reduce the descent. That helps. Another thing you could do is just entirely animate, similar to how we did with the walking animation. Just create frame by frame of you doing the jump. It'll look much smoother, and then just add a jump descent at the very end. But that's pretty much everything there is to talk about concerning how you set this up. I hope you found this useful in case you're creating your own 2D hand-drawn animated game. And oh, I guess there is one other thing I'd have to mention. If you want to animate this in color or have an actual texture, you do have to literally separately create a frame to add the color. I believe Billy, though, has actually done a video on the subject, so if you need more guidance on how to do that, you can go seek that out. And it's on the same channel, just so you know. But basically, you'd have to frame by frame animate color, either as a separate animation or as the same. I would advise separate, but, you know, to each their own. That could be very time-consuming, but it's the only way, so, you know, that's it. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this was an insightful video or otherwise enjoyable. If it was, then go ahead and subscribe if you can, and hit the bell to keep up with our videos. Also, subscribed or not, give a like. If you have any questions or statements, leave a comment. We try to answer all comments. If you like what we do here and want to help out, consider becoming a channel member. Alternatively, you can check out the link in the description to support us through Patreon. Until next time, take it easy. That's all for now.